am so excited to be joined on Woke AF Daily with Dr. Yusef Salaam. You know him, you've heard of his journey. He is one of the Exonerated Five. Your story, as it laid out in Ava DuVernay's depiction of what happened to you at the young age of 15 at the hands of our criminal justice system. We have watched your story. You have now since dedicated your life to having conversations, expressing what needs to be done for our quote unquote justice system to actually provide justice for those that are wrongfully accused and treat people, Black people, white people, Latinx people equally under the eyes of the law. Dr. Salaam, we are in an incredible moment right now, where we are actually uttering the words, and not just Black people, Black Lives Matter. What have you been feeling during, it has been over a month that young people have been in the streets. It has been months since the, incredibly vicious murders of Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, Rayshard Brooks, and so many others whose names we don't know about. How are you feeling in this moment about where we are?
I got to tell you, I'm feeling plugged in. I'm feeling supercharged. There is always a moment of depleting and feeling exhausted. But at the same time, looking at the journey, understanding the journey, realizing that being born in this hue allows me to be born on the side of right. Being run over by the spike wheels of justice allows me to frame things in a completely correct manner as it relates to what's going on now. And I feel good. I feel hopeful, because I feel like all of the things that our ancestors fought for, all of the gains made and taken, are now finally looking like we're at the end of that long, dark tunnel, and we can see the light. And we are there, and we will make it happen.
One of the things, and I appreciate that, because I am somebody, as people know who listen to my show, I struggle with hope on a regular basis. I will be very honest, that it breaks my heart that it takes a series of uprisings in all 50 states of this country in order to even have an arrest of officers who are caught on video. Right? Or white vigilante caught on video murdering our people. It shouldn't take that much, right? And I go back to, I was a young child during your case, but I remember it. And I remember the headlines. I remember, seeing the papers that my parents are looking at. And I can't think about, why was there no uprising for you, right? Like what would have happened if people had gathered in the streets and said, they're just boys, and it wasn't just Black folks that were doing it. And so I struggle with the hope aspect, because Ahmaud Arbery had been gone 2 months before the world knew about it, right? So do you think that it is going to take consistent video vigilance in order for us to get justice, or will it be something else?
I think what we're experiencing collectively is we are all beginning to vibrate on a very, very high level, right? Historically, we know that history is the best teacher, and we look at things that happen and we say, okay, where was the beginning of the so-called civil rights and human rights era? And we see that really began to take foundation in the killing of Emmett Till. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You mentioned that you were a young child when you saw me going through this, and I want the public to remember as well. Not only were you a young child, I was also a young child.
Right.
And that has to be understood in a very, very real space as it relates to how the system sees us. They bet on us participating in our own degradation. They bet on us participating in our ability to forget how powerful we are as a people, where we are as a people, why we are as a people, right? Nietzsche says if you can find the why, you can live anyhow. We want life, we want liberty, we want the pursuit of happiness. We haven't, some of us, maybe the majority of us, have not immigrated to this country, but we have a lineage that speaks to the horrors of the transatlantic slave trade. We have a connection that is cut off from the real power and brilliance of us as a real, true, original people, right? We have something that has been cut off, and what that is our historical connection to where we call home.
Mm.
If we knew who we were, then, as Dr. John Henry Clarke said so eloquently, to begin a people's history with slavery makes everything else looks like progress, right? But when you go back and you do the knowledge, then you realize that we've been under a serious level of technology. We've been captivated by the appearance of greatness that was stolen from us, right? They
Yeah.
tell us that we didn't create nothing,
Yep.
but yet everything we created, they use and say that they are the owners of it, that they own the trademarks, even down to things like alcohol. And I want us to understand that this space that we find ourselves in, they're counting on hopelessness to be a guiding part of our compass.
Mm.
Because if we can give up hope, like I want you to think about this for a second. Some of us, with regards to the Exonerated Five, were 14 years old. Some were 15, myself included. One was 16. We didn't know that what they were taking away from us and giving in its space was the nightmare and not the dream. And they wanted us to take it. They wanted us to take it so much so that written in the founding documents of this country, the 13th Amendment, it states that word slavery. It doesn't state prison, oppression. It states a word that wrapped around it is a reality, a truth that is undeniably present now because slavery has continued by another name. We understand this by the brilliant works that we find in The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander. We understand this in conversations that are being had in private and now spilling out into the public sphere, right? We see people in the streets enraged, angered, upset because why? Because people who have been volunteering themselves, placing themselves in positions of, in important positions, by the way, to protect and serve. Anytime you stand up and say, I want to be like this young 13-year-old, when I was in California, she came up to me and she said, Yusef, I'm a cadet, I'm 13, I want to become a cop. What advice can you give me? Now, everything in my being was screaming, run,
No.
no, oh no, right? Everything in my being was, oh no, you don't want to, but I held it together and I was given an answer. And that answer wasn't me. It was God speaking through me, telling this young lady something that was very important. I realized as I looked back that I was speaking to the future. And in speaking to the future, I needed to plant a seed of greatness, a seed of opportunity, a seed of what could be. And so I told this young lady, on the side of the cop cars throughout the nation, we have the words to serve and protect in some variation. In New York City, they go a step above that and they add the words courtesy, professionalism, and respect. My advice to you is that you do your job. We need enough of us to understand that not everybody lives. I mean, everybody dies, but not everybody lives. And I'm talking about that literally and also figuratively. Sometimes we hold ourselves back and we hold ourselves into a space of fear because the what if takes place. If I stand up, what happens to my job? If I stand up, will they come after me? Will they come after my children? You don't realize that everything that happens to you happens for you. We've been born just because of the color of our skin on the side of right. We've been born in the struggle. Whether we want to be in the struggle or not, when people see us, they don't see us and say, oh, that's a person who aligns themselves with us. They see the color of our skin. It can't be erased, regardless of what hue is there.
You know, I think that there is so much. What I realize about this moment in particular is that there's so much unlearning that needs to happen. There is so much that has been purposefully prescribed in the way of lies and misinformation. I go back to the beginning of you saying if you begin a person's history with slavery, right, then anything seems like progress. And I'm like really meditating and marinating on that right now because I think about so much that has been stolen from you, so much that has been stolen from young Black men and women just in general, of the understanding of the excellence and brilliance that they come from, right? If you can chop off somebody's history, if you can take away their faith, if you can then create an image for them, right? Then they lack imagination, right? Because you can't see anything bigger or bolder than what has been placed in front of you. And I wonder, as a part of what it is that we are defunding and deconstructing, how we deconstruct the lies that have been told to us, right? How we move outside of the history that's been given, right, and reshape it. I think that a lot of the rage and anger not just from Black people in the way that we are still viewed as chattel and treated as thus as an animal that needs to be put down. But from white people that I talk to, the rage and anger that they have is steeped in the lie that they have been allowed to perpetuate, and purposefully so, to uphold the system of white supremacy. So I wonder, what does mass unlearning look like? What does it mean also to not just defund the police, but defund public education in the way that has been a tool of white supremacy? If our history was taught in the way it was supposed to be taught, should be taught, then we wouldn't be in this moment. Then people at the age of 50, 60, 70 years old wouldn't be learning about the Tulsa Massacre for the first time. They wouldn't be learning about the police and how the police departments were started as slave patrols for the first time. They wouldn't be learning about Black Wall Street and the innovation and exploration that came from Ida B. Wells and others. They wouldn't be learning about these things for the first time. So I just wonder, in your thought, because you are one, an educator and a student at the same time, that what does mass unlearning and re-education look like?
I'm reminded of a quote, often quoted by our friend and teacher, James Baldwin. And he said, to be a Negro in this country and relatively conscious is to be in a rage almost all the time. Right? We are all waking up. We are not fully awake yet. Well, we are all waking up. And we've all been in a stupor. Sometimes that stupor is a stupor for us to be able to reorient ourselves because we need that. In other words, I remember first hearing about, I'm a Muslim, so I remember first hearing about the whole idea of not using drugs and alcohol and things of that nature. And I remember reading Islamic history, and it said that there was a time where they were told early on, you can drink, but just don't come to prayer drunk. And then there was a time after people built themselves up of saying, okay, well, shoot, this is messing me up. Now I'm stepping into a certain consciousness. They were then told drinking is forbidden. They were able at that moment to take all of their alcohol and pour it out. They said they poured out all of their alcohol so much so that the streets were flooded. Just to give you a picture of that. There's utility in being able to utilize something like alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
But then there comes a time where we have to figure that it's one thing to come home and unwind, but it's a completely different thing to utilize that kind of,
Sedation.
I don't even want to use that because
Because that's what I use. That's
that
what
but,
that's.
but I want to kind of put it in a different context, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's the word that they used when businesses were shutting down?
Mm-hmm.
The liquor store was a part of the essential. So I wanted to use that word and
Yep.
that
Yep. Yep.
concept to get people to understand something. We need you to participate in whatever it is that's going to happen to you. That's what my mother said. She told me when she came into that precinct, she said, they need you to participate in whatever it is that they're trying to do. Do not participate. Refuse. If they can constantly, in our communities, everywhere we look, we see places that will allow us to take a break from society and just sit back and, as I said to the reporter who asked me, what will you do now? You won this lawsuit. You know, you have this opportunity to do anything you want to do. I said, well, I'm not going to be sitting on the beach and sipping Mai Tais because that gets boring. There's a
Yeah.
moment where you have to recollect yourself, and then there's a moment where you have to realize that there is a war going on.
Mm-hmm.
The war doesn't hit everyone in terms of its reality. It doesn't hit everyone until they finally fully awakened. And then you realize they need you to participate. What happens if I refuse? We are the oil in the wheel called America. What happens if we say, nah, I'm not going to do that again? What happens when the person who is representing white supremacy, white male dominance, tells his police force or her government, shoot, and there's no one there to fire the bullet? Being unified in that respect becomes more powerful than an atomic bomb. In that reality, we would not even have to go to war because we are the ones behind the machines of war.
Mm.
And when we come out of that and say, no, I'm not going to shoot this person because you said that they are a person that you should fear for your life, the coded language. I'm not going to do this and poison these people and do these kinds of mistreatment, because we all have to live in harmony. And the worst part about it is that this, like what we've been experiencing, this awakening that people are causing and calling an uprising, is speaking to something that Malcolm X talked about before he was assassinated. And that thing that he talked about was putting this reality on the global court, talking about human rights, talking about those inalienable things that we've all been given by the Creator. But they want us to believe that there are some who are higher
Yep.
and some who are lower.
Mm-hmm.
Today is the day for us to change tomorrow. That's what we're living in right now.
You know, the collective awakening is what I have been feeling for quite some time, and I was feeling it before the uprisings began, because I believe that there is a vibrational pull that is happening right now, that if enough people tune in right, then we're going to be able to tune the system out. My question to you is, how do we remain in tune? How do we stay, as I always say on my show, how do we stay woke? Because I say that it is a practice like anything else. You don't just have an awakening and then you stay that way. It is a practice, because every single thing, all of the things that you mentioned, from alcohol to marijuana, everything is created to sedate the masses. Everything is created to keep us out of touch, out of step, to overwhelm us. The purpose of this entire administration is coordinated chaos, right? So that if people become so overwhelmed, so filled with grief and anger and anxiety, they will tap out. So how do people stay connected, stay vibrationally in tuned, and stay woke?
I would say stay prayed up, but I know that there's certain people who don't believe in prayer, right? I would say meditate, but meditate deeply, right? There's a certain thing that happens when you start understanding breath, for instance, right? There's a breathing that happens that we all do that happens in our chest. But when you look at a baby, their chest is not moving as they breathe, their belly is. That's called the original breath. That thing that you breathe deep, you hold it for a few moments and then you let it out, right? But as you breathe deep and you can push that breath 3 inches below your belly, you start feeling that true sense of the power source of where it is inside of yourself, right? And so I always tell people, like, we have to begin to utilize self to liberate self. Because when we plug into that reality, we already know that God gave us something special. We were one of over 400 million options when our parents came together. Every person in this world, we were one of over 400 million options. And when God said be, it is. And God made sure that we came to be. And understanding that, right, it causes you to think things different. You say to yourself, man, yeah, we're upset, we're angry. There's a rage that goes on, but then there has to be a sense of being able to center yourself and say, okay, now what do I do with this? We're on the brink of doing everything. All things that were supposed to guarantee that we are, because what we're fighting, and this is the other part that has to be understood, we're not fighting people. The ultimate reality is not, oh, that person is at war with me. No, the ultimate reality is we're fighting spiritual wickedness in high and low places. Right? And once we realize that and we plug in and we meditate and we recenter ourselves and we figure out how to maneuver in this new reality, nothing that was is now. Everything that was is gone. I don't care if things get back to normal or some sense of normalcy. Whatever was, whoever was, all of the things that we just came through, fighting 2 pandemics, one that we became aware of because we were like, okay, it's coming. We're talking about COVID-19 and realizing that there's been variations of COVID throughout the years, right? But then the overwhelming swelling, the ground swelling of people calling for true liberty, true freedom, true justice, true equality with regards to Black lives mattering, right? Not to say that puts us above, but that brings us up to the equality of all people. And it takes away the 3/5 label that has been placed and given us. The 3/5 label that says we are second-class citizens. The understanding of how oppressive it is to create a system that morphs out of the emancipation of slavery that wasn't told to all of the slaves, so therefore we have a Juneteenth, and that morphs into the new Jim Crow that goes into slavery by another name, that allows for the system of oppression and inequality and all of the two Americas that we are experiencing. I often call it, from the perspective of criminal justice, I want to say criminal justice system, but I call it the criminal system of injustice. I want the American dream. But at 15, I was run over by the spike wheels of justice and introduced to the American nightmare. The beauty of it is this. We have teachers whose shoulders we're standing on. Teachers like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who spoke about the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. We have to have that sense of it's on me. I have to be my ancestors' wildest dreams. I have to do all that I am supposed to do and that I was given purpose to do. And just like Dr. King said, when you find your purpose in life, because all of us have a purpose, when you find your purpose in life, do it as if God himself called you to do it at this very moment. And I've said before, continuing with his speech, he didn't go to the most grandiose idea of what you want to be, the dream job that all of us want to aspire to. He went to the most menial thing to let everybody know that we all have a purpose. From the street sweeper to the person in the White House, not the current.
Not that person. No, we know.
I just got to be clear, right?
You're like, not him.
Right. But he said that if it's your lot in life to be a street sweeper, he said, sweep the streets like Michelangelo painted pictures. Sweep the streets like Beethoven composed music, like Leoton Price sang before the opera, right? We have greatness inside of us. And that same greatness is like that seed that was spoken about. What's the T.D. Jakes? He was talking about the mighty oak tree in the acorn. Regardless of how long you don't water it, the power of its truth is still in the seed. That same power of truth is inside of all of us. We're now receiving the waters, and we're now watering ourselves by constantly not allowing, and this is a beautiful time. I want to say this from a position of experience that we're all experiencing, whether we've watched all the films on Netflix, whether we've seen all the movies on Disney Plus, whatever we've done, we still have to pick up a book. And when we pick up a book, we go back to the original essence of what happens when people write. That mental picture of a movie is happening in your own brain. And that mental picture, that ability to pick up a book, to refresh, to re-educate, to understand, right? Now we can pick up information and say, okay, well, they're telling us this is the history of America. But part of the beauty of continuing to bask in the marination of truth is to read the true history of America by people like Howard Zinn. To pick up not only the education of the Negro by Dr. Carter G. Woodson, but also the miseducation of the Negro by Dr. Carter G. Woodson. We have to begin to see things for what they are, not what they're told to be. Because they could tell us it's raining. And we like, don't smell like rain. That smell kind of like uric acid.
And that's literally what is happening on a day-to-day basis is that essence of gaslighting. But I will tell you, one, I appreciate your time so very much, and I appreciate your good word, because it sounds to me as if part of liberation is not in the waiting, but it is opting out of a system that was never built for you, and opting out of your participation in your own, to use your words, degradation and demise. Dr. Yusef Salaam, I hope, my goodness, that you come back to Woke AF, because I just had a great awakening, and I feel something different, which I think is a little bit of hope. And I didn't feel that before.
Well,
So
I do want to say this as we wrap up. I want to remind people that we don't have to be against the system, right? We have to understand how we fight is the fight, right? And I'm talking about sometimes deconstructing things so that we can understand why, because we can't bring back, any of the ones that have fallen, but
yeah,
we can look at possibilities of survival through their stories that have now been told. And I think that that's the part that's important. How do we figure out how to fight so that we can survive till tomorrow? Because every day we wake up is another day to give thanks.
indeed. Thank you so very much. Thank you for your work. Thank you for your words. I appreciate it, and I appreciate you greatly.
Thank you for having me on your show, and I appreciate you as well.
Thank you. Be well and stay safe.
You as well.
Thank you.